have a question for you. I know it's unusual for a non-children's homily for me to start out with a question for the congregation, but it's actually a series of questions. You can answer just by show of hands. How many of you have ever called a plumber? How many of you have ever called an electrician? How many of you have ever gone out to eat? This will become important later. Just wanted to establish a baseline before beginning. So this morning's gospel lesson is very vivid in its imagery. And there are countless stories, movies, TV shows that take this theme of legion, this multitude of demons within this man, and they expound upon it in their own fantastical ways. But it's a very vivid story of this man who the demons immediately recognize the power and authority of Jesus. What have you to do with me, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me. And then the casting out of all the demons into the gathered swine, the pigs immediately rushing down the steep bank into the lake and drowning. The fear of the people in the Gerasene region at witnessing all that had happened. It's very rich in its imagery. And I find that oftentimes when we have a gospel passage that is so rich in imagery, we lose some of the other details that might help us understand a bit more. In 1st century AD, or of the Common Era, demon possession was a catch-all term for someone who had aberrant behavior. If you have some tendency to do something that's not what people do, well, it must be because you were possessed by a demon, because evil spirits are the only plausible explanation for why you would do something weird. They just didn't know what we know now, that there can be all sorts of reasons why you do something weird. You could just be a weird person. That's always an option. You could have chemical imbalances in your brain that just have your neurons firing incorrectly or out of sync with how they're supposed to fire. You could have any of a number of mental health conditions, of dissociative identity disorder, schizophrenia, all sorts of learning disabilities, genetic conditions that predispose you to not doing things the way normally things are done. Maybe you've experienced trauma and you've repressed some part of yourself that prevents you from engaging fully with whatever is going on around you. There are hundreds, thousands, millions of reasons why someone might do something weird. And today, we know more than they did then. It's not to say that demon possession never happens, but more often than not, if there is someone that thinks that there's a demonic possession going on, it's probably really a mental health issue. And so we have this morning the Gerasene demoniac with the legion of demons within him. Maybe this is a literal story of Jesus casting out a legion of demons from a man, but maybe it's a story of a person who had some mental health condition. or some genetic condition that caused these aberrant behaviors. We didn't get all of it in Luke's gospel, but in Mark's gospel and Matthew's gospel, they talk about this man who walks around at night howling like an animal, and he bangs his head against the stones, and he's causing himself self-harm. Now, I'm not a professional when it comes to mental health issues, so I can't diagnose what was going on. And we only have a written report of something that happened nearly 2,000 years ago, so it'd be hard to actually diagnose this person. But I've seen a strong case made that this man was probably someone with autism. That a lot of the signs he exhibited, we would classify as autism today. And because they didn't know enough, you have this man in severe need who's been cast to the side. He doesn't live in a house, he lives in the tombs, because that's the only area nearby where there's shelter for him to stay. Every place with a roof over it, the people don't want him there, because he acts a little weird. He makes odd noises at inappropriate times. He sometimes does things that seem violent. He hurts himself. What if he hurts someone else? Or what if he hurts the animals? Best to just send him away, and we'll have people stand guard over him. We'll bind him in chains. It wasn't that long ago that that's what we did to anyone with a mental health condition, even here in the USA. It wasn't that long ago where people would be put in straitjackets and locked in insane asylums that were unregulated, where all sorts of unethical, immoral experiments were done on people because, well, they won't know the difference. No one outside of this asylum cares about anyone in the asylum, so I might as well cut open this person's brain and see what I can find. We have a long history of treating people with mental disorders as though they are themselves evil. That they are somehow less than human. That it's okay to just cast them to the side and forget about them or ignore them. Or at the very least, have as little interaction with them as possible. But that's not the response Jesus has. Jesus doesn't show fear when this wild man approaches him wearing no clothes. Jesus doesn't kind of walk to the other side of the street to stay away from this person who would be considered ritually unclean at that time. Jesus went right up and met him where he was and healed him, because that's what he needed. How many times do we want to just cast things to the side because it's too difficult or inconvenient for us to deal with? How many people do we allow to be on the margins of our society because it's easier for us if they're over there instead of in our face? How many times do we look at mental health as some nebulous thing that it just means you're crazy, and because you're crazy, you should just go to some insane asylum and just be there by yourself. Far too often do we allow the stigma of mental health to continue in our society. We should respond the way Jesus responds. We should meet people where they are. If you make some weird noises during a church service, you make some weird noises during a church service. If you're a kid and you can't sit still, move around. When I was a kid, I climbed under the chairs at St. Matthew's in Westerville, and I would just pop up in random pews and like, I'm sitting with this family today. Or maybe I would go out and swing in the coat rack because I had way too much energy back then and I just couldn't sit still. I did some weird things, but I was always welcome. What if we welcome everyone who did something weird? Whether it's weird because they have autism, it's weird because they have narcolepsy and they've fallen asleep during a sermon. Probably not the first time that would happen to one of my sermons. Probably won't be the last time that someone falls asleep. It happens. But what if we saw people with mental health issues and just met them where they are? What if we provided for them what they needed? And here's where I'm going to get back to that question I asked you at the beginning. Because we have such a stigma with mental health issues. We have this idea that if you go see a therapist, it means you're broken, it means you're weak, it means you're incapable. But a therapist is just like any other profession. For all of you that raised your hands about calling a plumber, because you either don't know enough about plumbing or it was a difficult enough task that you'd rather have a professional deal with it. Therapists do that for mental health. If you called an electrician because I'd rather not get electrocuted today trying to install a ceiling fan, mental health professionals know how to not get electrocuted when dealing with mental health issues. If you have gone out to eat and had a professional chef prepare a meal for you because you are too busy to prepare a meal for yourself, because they are a better cook than you are, because of whatever reason, mental health professionals are there because they have been trained to deal with issues relating to the human brain. And when things aren't going right, they can help. So if you are dealing with a mental health issue, see a therapist. Don't feel like that makes you weak. If you want to come see me or Paul first, we're not trained to be mental health counselors, but we will give you some counseling and we can direct you as to how you can go seek better help than we can offer. And if you know someone that has a mental health condition, urge them to do the same. But do it from a place of meeting them where they are and loving them where they are. Do it from a place of, I want you to get this help because I love you, not because you're a burden to me. Not because I'm tired of dealing with your stuff, but because you may not be equipped to give them the best care that they need. Our response to all people is to be just like Jesus was with this Gerasene man. To see him with all the demons he had, all the struggles he was dealing with, and to reach out and meet him just as he was. And not to have another sycophant to follow him around, lauding his praise everywhere he went. But Jesus said, no, go back home. Tell the people there what God has done for you. Spread the news that you don't have to be afraid of the demons you face in this life. You don't have to fear being cast aside, because there is a kingdom coming where you belong, where all people belong. Weirdness and all. There is a place for you and me and them and us. That's the message we have this morning. So I pray that you don't view mental health issues with stigma. That you don't see going to a therapist as something to be looked down upon. That you go out from this place empowered to meet people where they are. Love them where they are. And do whatever you can to get them the best care possible. And at the end of the day, to spread the news of the good things God has done for you. Not just here in this place, but out in the world, where people most need to hear that news. Go home and tell the people there the good things God has done for you. Let the people know that they are all welcome in God's kingdom.